So April is Poetry Month,
April's Poetry Month
and I was trying to think of a
in the
corollary.
UK and the US, but not in Australia.
I'm so sorry. I'd love to hear Alice Allen on why that is. She has no idea.
They just had their first Poetry Month, and it wasn't
a
great.
huge failure.
It was kind of.
massive.
It sounds like it was sort of a medium dud, but yeah.
So I was trying to think of something similar to this in another art form, and I couldn't. So it's Poetry Month. So in the morning when I shower, I put on NPR, and in Poetry Month means that at whatever time I happen to be showering every day, they read a poem. But instead of reading a published poem, they ask listeners to submit poetry.
No.
And so that means every day WNYC has a poem read, and it's so terrible. I can't explain how terrible it is. If the only goal were to make people hate poetry, it would be a huge success. But the deep voiced announcer, very genuinely and generously says, and as you know, April is Poetry Month, and coming us with a new poetry, we've decided that Geraldine from Central Brooklyn has this to say, and then Geraldine Brooklyn will give this long poem about how it's hard to dye her hair in the pandemic, and how her husband even called her a ratty-haired fishnet lady, and the kids laughed, and what don't I take care of this pandemic? I take care of myself and my children, and now you want me to take care of you, and he's like, ho, Geraldine from Central Brooklyn with this today's poem of the. So I was thinking about how if there's another art form that we are asked to engage with a sort of amateur versions of with sincerity and respect, and I couldn't really think of one. Like there's children sing sometimes, and children are terrible at singing, and children are terrible at painting, and children are terrible at all the arts, and we have to see them do their art or the pottery or whatever, and we nod because they're children. But are there any examples you can think of amateur adults producing artwork that we are meant to approve of or applaud or take seriously or even be subjected to other than poetry? And I couldn't. Never does somebody say, like, it's opera month, so Jimmy is gonna, from the bakery, he's gonna sing an aria, or like it's like I don't even know what, it's painting month, so we got Stacy over at HR to
it'd be worse. It would be worse. Would be National Baking Month, where
right
like Stacy from like the
here's a scone,
the scone, like it.
She's never really she's never charged, and there's no business, there's no experience making scones, but here it's. So I just got me thinking, is that a sign? What is that a sign of? It's a sign of I think disrespect towards poetry, because there's the thought that like anyone can do it, but there's also this idea that but poetry is a public good, or like it doesn't matter how terrible it is, but we just we could use some of it. Like February was Black History Month, so they told a lot of stories about Black people, and that.
And you know what you asked during Black History Month, and you said, "Why isn't there a White History Month? Why isn't that's what you?" No, like what you're saying is because you know why, Brian? Every month is National Prose Month.
Right.
That's why. Yeah. No, I mean I think you're right. I think maybe the.
Sorry, I thought you were actually accusing me of saying the punchline in the joke about why isn't there a White History Month?
Exactly.
I'm thinking, could I have said that? It doesn't sound like something I would have said. I know the answer why there's not a White History Month. When would I have said that?
The maybe not mitigating but complicating question is that with poetry, not only there's a weird kind of double perception we have with poetry. We're on the one hand, we hate it. And we think
everybody
it is
hates
bad,
it. Yeah.
Right? We think
it's boring and hard.
Geraldine's poem is terrible, and it's terrible that I have to have it imposed upon me. But then on the other hand, we simultaneously think I don't get it. It's a little bit, which is why people make the very tired but sadly apt comparisons to the Emperor's New Clothes story.
Yes,
we do and that's part of what happens with National Poetry Month is we say, I guess because we all agree that we hate it, but then we don't get it. It's sort of, you know what National Poetry Month is like. You know what we treat poetry like. It's the way that those of us who grew up in a who didn't grow up in Manhattan treat religion, right? Like we feel like, I guess I'm going to go to church. I get I'm and I hate it and I find it boring and I don't really get it and I kind of think it's a joke, but
Jews
feel
see that.
obliged to do this.
Yeah, okay. We Jews have that same relationship with religion, even if we grew up in Manhattan.
You perceptively read my reference to New York as a reference to Judaism.
New York. That's all New York is on this. That's lyric. It's yeah. No, we folks. When you did that different sort of accents in America, and then you just did the Jew voice for 20 minutes. I don't know why. I'm from the Upper East Side. Where is my bagel and my cream cheese? I am so poor, and I wanted to save my money, even though I control. It's like a baby Jew voice. It's a lisp. So Jews feel that same way about religion. But the difference is that it's not as though we have to go be Jewish a few times a year. So non-Jews come in and talk to us about Judaism, or like. They just like get some Jew to talk to you. We do a little bit of that in the either in politics or in school. We do a little bit of the like my daughter wearing a Kwanzaa crown and seeing like Africa. And I'm like, well, all right, I'm great, but okay. So my kid sang the first fruit of Kwanzaa, which I'm pretty sure is a song that my school made up for Kwanzaa. I also think there are far more children in America. I guess that's not necessarily bad, because there are probably far more children in America singing dreidel songs than there are Jews in America. But I think order of magnitude, there's more time spent telling kids about Kwanzaa than anybody celebrating Kwanzaa in the United States. But that's probably not problematic. That's probably healthy.
I think it's fine. I think my kids do dreidel stuff, and I think that's all fine. I think it's slightly sillier when we do it when like presidents do it, which they also do a little bit of. They also do it we're all like it was. I guess Andrew.
My Jewish friends are right, and l'chaim to you.
Right. So that's a little bit silly. You do get a little bit of that on certain holidays, but
the idea of interrupting the news for a poem written by Jimmy is just like the wackiest. Like, you don't have stand-up comedy month where just some guy is telling jokes. That sounds better than poetry month.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a meaningful argument to make that, and I think Champagne Sharks actually had some criticism of what they called Whack History Month. That I think when you turn what could otherwise be a serious topic of study into a news interrupting chore for everybody, then it's not doing anybody any favors. But yeah, I don't think there's another. We don't. But I mean, I think just, again, it's like my ongoing thesis that we increasingly talk about poetry in figurative terms. Like we don't. It's on its way to becoming a metaphorical art form. So I think. Yeah, it's horrible and ridiculous, and I think the only reason that then one question. Please.
Sorry, one question is, why do you think the program director at NPR doesn't find 30 poets to come every day and to read an example of their work? Why do you think they call for listeners to submit poems for them to read every day?
I think that's the most obvious thing in the world, right? Because they don't give a shit about poetry, and this is an opportunity for listener engagement.
Okay.
Like they don't want. First of all, they don't want to go
because the actual poetry doesn't matter.
No,
because
the poetry doesn't matter.
The poetry is entirely superfluous to the conversation.
Yeah,
where it's NPR, our listeners, the kind of thing people want, like poets. So, in the same way that you have a call-in show where people say, "I think the problem with our infrastructure is that there aren't enough subway stations in my neighborhood," where you could just bring in the infrastructure expert. But there is that sort of engagement that makes listener-funded WNYC feel more one for its listeners. Yeah, that's the answer.
But I think you actually make a reasonable comparison because as you say, like some guy on the street making a comment about the subway is not as useful as like the guy who runs the subway making a comment about the subway. But we basically treat poems the way we treat opinions.
Exactly.
Like if you could in 10 minutes create something that everybody would, despite hating, agree was an aria, then maybe we would have National Aria Month. Right. But like everybody will say that poem sucks, and they'll say I don't get it, and I hate poems, and listening to that poem makes me hate poems even more. But nobody will say that is not a poem.